Jacobins, and I'm going to read starting a little into chapter 12, the bourgeoisie prepares to restore slavery. And just for a little context, Toussaint, the leader of San Domingo, which is now modern-day Haiti, has essentially declared independence from France without formally declaring independence from France. And we have learned that this is after the French Revolution, during the reign of Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte of France. Napoleon has decided that he has to send troops to Haiti or to San Domingo and restore the colony. And he's siding with the maritime bourgeoisie, who says, let's restore slavery. And Toussaint, a black former slave who's leading San Domingo, is preparing his resistance and dealing with all the complications in Haiti and San Domingo. When Vincent arrived in Paris, preparations were well underway, but the Constitution gave Bonaparte a convenient excuse. Poor Vincent had attempted to persuade Toussaint to give way to Bonaparte by condemning the Constitution as treason. Now he tried to persuade Bonaparte to give way to Toussaint by denying that the Constitution was treason. Bonaparte accused Toussaint of being sold to the British. Stoutly, Vincent defended him. Bonaparte swore at Vincent, cursed the quote, gilded Africans, end quote, said that he would not leave an epaulette on the shoulders of a single inward in the colony. Napoleon Bonaparte did not like black people, apparently. Bonaparte boasted that Britain had shown some inclination to oppose the expedition, but when he threatened to clothe Toussaint with unlimited powers and acknowledge his independence, the British had kept silence. Bonaparte thought that they dreaded the effect of an independent San Domingo on their own slave colony in Jamaica, but Pitt, Dundas, and Maitland were laughing in their sleeves and rubbing their hands in anticipation. Vincent tried to point out the dangers of the expedition. Bonaparte called Toussaint a, quote, revolted slave, end quote, called Vincent a coward, and drove him from his presence. Vincent was appalled at Bonaparte's violence. If this was the spirit in which the French were going to San Domingo, they were heading for a fall. As anxious now for France as for San Domingo, he took the bold step of addressing a memoir to the minister, in which he tried to paint the strength of the colony and the extraordinary genius of the man who ruled there. Quote, at the head of so many resources is a man the most active and tireless of whom one can possibly have any idea. It is the strictest truth to say that he is everywhere and above all in that spot where a sound judgment and danger make it essential for him to be. His great sobriety, the faculty accorded to him alone of never taking a rest, the advantage he enjoys of being able to start at once with the work in his office after wearisome journeys, of replying to 100 letters a day and tiring out his secretaries. More than that, the art of tantalizing and confusing everybody, even to deceit. All this makes of him a man so superior to all around him that respect and submission reach the limits of fanaticism in a vast number of heads. He has imposed on his brothers in San Domingo a power without bounds. He is the absolute master of the island, and nothing can counteract his wishes, whatever they may be. Although some distinguished men, but very few blacks among them, know what are his plans and view them with great fear, end quote. Vincent described Toussaint as superior to everyone in San Domingo, but if one reads that extract again, it becomes clear that this brave, honest, intelligent, and experienced officer was also obviously describing the most extraordinary human being he had ever met in his life, with powers beyond what he thought possible. In the writings of contemporaries describing the great figures of the French Revolution and Napoleonic era, one finds this note of astonishment, this quote, I can't believe my own eyes, end quote, attitude, in writings about only three men, Bonaparte, Nelson the sailor, and Toussaint. Bonaparte was so angry that he banished Vincent to the island of Elba. Fun fact, Napoleon eventually ended up banished to the island of Elba when he was defeated the second time. Personally loved and respected by all their contemporaries, Vincent and Beauvais failed, as will fail all who do not understand that in a revolution, each must choose his side and stick to it. But though Bonaparte might shout, quote, inward, end quote, in the best slave-owning manner, more than anyone in France, he divined the difficulties. At first, he had thought it easy. The colonists who had fled in the early days of the Revolution thought of the slaves as a motley crowd of black brigands who would fly at the first sight of white men. How could such cowed and trembling inwards ever be anything else, was the thoughts of Bonaparte. They had defeated the British. Nonsense. That was fever. General Michel of the last commission, who had not seen Toussaint's armies in action, called his officers a collection of conceited incompetents. But Room, Pascal, and Vincent, all of whom liked the blacks and therefore knew what they were capable of, were against any expedition. Pascal said that the more enlightened of the blacks, i.e., those who had been free before the revolution, did not love Toussaint, but 49/50ths of the population followed him blindly, regarding him as being inspired by God. Room's attitude was most astonishing. Room was not even a Frenchman, but a Creole from Tobago. Yet, despite his rough treatment at the hands of Toussaint, he still retained his belief in Toussaint's devotion to France. He wrote that Toussaint had acted irregularly because his fear of slavery. Let Bonaparte clothe him with full civil and military power and reassure him about the future. At the end of the war, he would hand back the colony. Malenfant, an old colonist who was now an official in San Domingo, was offered a post in the expedition. He drafted a memorandum full of praise for Toussaint and the laborers and warned Bonaparte against the catastrophe he was preparing. When he met Leclerc, the captain general, a few days before the fleet sailed, Leclerc accused him of cowardice. Quote, all the inwards, when they see an army, will lay down their arms. They will be only too happy that we pardon them, end quote. You are misinformed, General, end quote. But there is a colonist who is offered to arrest Toussaint in the interior of the country with 60 grenadiers, end quote. Quote, he is bolder than I, for I would not attempt it with 60,000, end quote. Quote, he is very rich, Toussaint. He has more than 40 millions, end quote. Patiently, Malenfant pointed out to him that it was impossible for Toussaint to have this sum. Malenfant shared Room's opinion of Toussaint. He said afterward that if Bonaparte had sent Laveaux to San Domingo with 3,000 men, all would have been well. Toussaint was an eminently reasonable man, and that he and Laveaux would have worked out a modus vivendi whereby French capital would have full opportunity in the island. It was not to be. Leclerc pooh-poohed Malenfant's remonstrances and dismissed him. Bonaparte never had any such foolish ideas. Vincent had told him of the strength of Toussaint's army, with its soldiers and officers tried and experienced by 10 years of constant fighting. And the great soldier added more and more men to the force. So as to avoid too much talk, he distributed his preparations in every harbor in France, Holland, and Belgium. The preliminaries of peace were signed on October 1st, 1801, 8 days after Bonaparte gave the word, and even the delay of adverse winds held up the expedition only until December 14th. It was the largest expedition that had ever sailed from France, consisting of 20,000 veteran troops under some of Bonaparte's ablest officers. The chief of staff was Dugas, whom Bonaparte had left in charge in charge of Egypt when he set out on the march to Palestine. Boudet had commanded the advance guard of Desailles, whose last-minute attack had saved Bonaparte from a disastrous defeat at Marengo. Boyer had commanded the mobile guards, which patrolled Upper Egypt. Humbert had commanded the expedition against Ireland. There were men who had experience of guerrilla warfare in La Vendée. General Pamphile Delacroix, who sailed with the expedition and wrote a valuable history of the campaign and the San Domingo Revolution, has left us his opinion. Quote, "The army of Leclerc was composed of an infinite number of soldiers with great talent, good strategists, great tacticians, officers of engineers and artillery, well educated and very resourceful," end quote. At the last moment, Bonaparte changed the command, putting his brother-in-law, Leclerc, at the head, a sign of the importance he attached to the venture. Pauline, Leclerc's wife, and their son went with the expedition. She carried musicians, artists, and all the paraphernalia of a court. Slavery would be reestablished, civilization restarted, and a good time would be had by all. And in these last crucial months, Toussaint, fully aware of Bonaparte's preparations, was busy sawing off the branch on which he sat. In the north, around La Plaisance, Limbé, Dondon, and the vanguard of the revolution, was not satisfied with the new regime. Toussaint's discipline was hard, but it was infinitely better than the old slavery. What these old revolutionary blacks objected to was working for their white masters. Moisset was the commandant of the North Province, and Moisset sympathized with the blacks. Work, yes, but not for whites. Quote, "Whatever my old uncle may do, I cannot bring myself to be the executioner of my color. It is always in the interest of the metropolis that he scolds me, but these interests are those of the whites, and I shall only love them when they have given me back the eye that they made me lose in battle," end quote. Gone were the days when Toussaint would leave the front and ride through the night to inquire into the grievances of the laborers, and, though protecting the whites, make laborers see that he was their leader. Revolutionaries through and through, these bold men, own brothers of the Cordeliers in Paris and the Viborg workers in Petrograd, organized another insurrection. Their aim was to massacre the whites, overthrow Toussaint's government, and some hoped put Moisset in his place. Every observer, and Toussaint himself, thought that the laborers were following him because of his past services and his unquestioned superiority. The insurrection proved that they were following him because he represented that complete emancipation from their former degradation, which was their chief goal. As soon as they saw that he was no longer going to this end, they were ready to throw him over. This was no mere riot of a few discontented or lazy blacks. It was widespread over the north. The revolutionaries chose a time when Toussaint was away at Petit Riviere, attending the wedding of Dessalines. The movement should have begun in the Cap on September 21st, but Christophe heard of it just in time to check the first outbursts in various quarters of the town. On the 22nd, the revolt burst in the revolutionary districts of Marmelade, Plaisance, Limbé, Port Margot, and Dondon, home of the famous regiment of the Sans-Culottes. On the morning of the 23rd, it broke out again in the Cap, while armed bands, killing all the whites whom they met on the way, appeared in the suburbs to make contact with those in the town. While Christophe defeated these, Toussaint and Dessalines marched against the rising in Marmelade and Dondon, and it fell to pieces before him and his terrible lieutenant. Moisset, avoiding a meeting with Toussaint, attacked and defeated another band, but blacks in certain districts had revolted to the cry of "Long live Moisset." Toussaint therefore had him arrested and would not allow the military tribunal even to hear him. The documents, he said, were enough. Quote, "I flatter myself that the commissioners will not delay a judgment so necessary to the tranquility of the colony." He was afraid, end quote, he was afraid that Moisset might supplant him. Upon this hint, the commission gave judgment and Moisset was shot. He died as he had lived. He stood before the place of execution in the presence of the troops of the garrison and in a firm voice gave the word to the firing squad, "Fire, my friends, fire." What exactly did Moisset stand for? We shall never know. 40 years after his death, Madiot, the Haitian historian, gave an outline of Moisset's program, whose authenticity, however, has been questioned. Toussaint refused to break up the large estates. Moisset wanted small grants of land for junior officers and even the rank and file. Moisset favored the whites against the mulattoes. Moisset sought to build an alliance between the blacks and mulattoes against the French. It is certain that he had a strong sympathy for the laborers and hated the old slave owners, but he was not anti-white. He bitterly regretted the indignities to which he had been forced to submit room, and we know how highly he esteemed Sonthonache. We have very little to go on, but he seems to have been a singularly attractive and possibly profound person. The old slave owners hated him, and they pressed Toussaint to get rid of him. Christophe, too, was jealous of Moisset, and Christophe loved white society. Guilty or not guilty of treason, Moisset had too many enemies to escape the implications of the "Long live Moisset" shouted by the revolutionaries. To the blacks of the North, already angry with Toussaint's policy, the execution of Moisset was the final disillusionment. They could not understand it, and was and is inevitable. They thought in terms of color. After Toussaint himself, Moisset, his nephew, symbolized the revolution. Just a reminder, Moisset was Toussaint's nephew. He it was who had led the laborers against Hauteville. He also had led the insurrection which extorted authority from Rome to take over Spanish San Domingo, an insurrection which to the laborers had been for the purpose of stopping the Spanish traffic in slaves. Moisset had arrested Rome and later Vincent, and now Toussaint had shot him for taking the part of the blacks against the whites. Toussaint recognized his error. At the break with the French, and Vincent had shaken him from his usual calm in their last interview. It was nothing to the remorse which moved him after the execution of Moisset. None who knew him had ever seen him so agitated. He tried to explain it away in a long proclamation. Moisset was the soul of the insurrection. Moisset was a young man of loose habits. It was useless. Moisset had stood too high in his councils for too long. And that's where I'm going to stop tonight. Devin, I love you. I hope you sleep well and don't let the chappies bite. Mwah. Good night. Mwah. I love you. Sweet dreams.